Hello, and welcome to Dust Jackets, Conversations with Authors. My special guest today is Paty Jager. She's an author of mystery, suspense, and romance novels. Welcome, Paty.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Really happy to have you here. So let me just tell you a bit about her. I've actually known Paty for at least a decade. I can't quite remember when we met. I think it may have been around 2004 or so. We've spurred each other on in writing challenges. We've shared knowledge. Whenever one of us found something new, we would share it with each other. We've crossed paths at conferences and bookstore signings. And most of all, we've both just really cheered each other on in our careers. So I'm so happy to have her here today. She's not only a great writer, I've read a lot of her books, which is usually not the case with many authors I've interviewed, but she's also just a really good person. So let me just take a moment and read a bio for you. Award-winning author Paty Jager and her husband raise alfalfa hay in rural Eastern Oregon. On her road to publication, she wrote freelance articles for 2 local newspapers and enjoyed her job with the County Extension Service as a 4-H program assistant. Raising hay and cattle, riding horses, and battling rattlesnakes, she not only writes the Western lifestyle, she lives it. All her work has Western or Native American elements in them, along with hints of humor and engaging characters. Her penchant for research takes her on side trips that eventually turn into yet another story. And I can definitely vouch for her living out in the Western. She lives in the eastern side of Oregon. I visited her once at a previous home, and she's now moved even further out into the country than she was there. For people who don't know, can you just kind of describe, your home and your acreage? Because it's always amazing to me, primarily a city girl.
Well, we have 280 acres, but only 60 of it is under alfalfa, which we cut for hay. And then the rest of it is sagebrush and rocks and dirt.
So it's just there for if you want to expand or just to keep safety around your property?
It's just for us to have fun exploring. Because my husband wanted to pivot and he wanted the alfalfa field, but he didn't want so much that he couldn't take care of it himself. So we only have the 60 acres, which is just enough to keep him busy during the summer.
Sounds good to me. So let me get to the questions that we have here. I believe you just released, or you're planning to release, your 50th novel. And looking back, are you surprised at all that you've accomplished during this period of time? I know I'm surprised at what I've accomplished, and I only have half the books that you do. So, what do you think are the overarching themes that have continued in your books from the beginning of your career to now?
Okay, well, first, yes, my 50th book will be releasing in May.
Wow.
I had planned on it releasing May 1st, but one of my sensitivity readers hasn't been able to get to it yet. So I may have to do pre-order May 1st and then have it come out a little later in the month. But yeah, I couldn't believe it when I was adding them up and I came up with found out that it was going to be the 50th coming up. It's just a blur. I don't realize that I've written it, but at the same time, I have so many stories and things still rambling around in my head that I guess it makes sense that I've gotten that many out.
You just keep writing and writing.
Yeah. Every time a new idea comes to me, I just decide, okay, that sounds good. Maybe I need to put that into a book and figure out if it's going to go into a series I already have, or if it's an idea that needs to be put into a new series, which is kind of what happened with the new one I'm working on now. As for the overarching themes, yes, justice. Every one of my books, there's got some kind of justice or injustice has been happened or been taken care of or whatever in my stories. It's just something that really hits home with me, I guess. So I put it in my books, and I try to show how everybody can get along if they just understand each other. And then, because a lot of times the injustices come because they just don't understand.
Ah.
No.
Well, I know in terms of finding justice in your mysteries that makes sense, because you have people whose job is to mete out justice. But in terms of, some of your romances or your spirit novels, can you kind of describe how justice works in those?
Okay. Well, the Spirit trilogy are set among the Nez Perce starting in the 1700s, before the white man showed up, and it kind of shows a little bit about how they survived and how they were trying to keep themselves safe from other tribes, and then the encroaching white man, and then the white man shows up, and then it shows how things were taken from them during that time. And then the third one, where they're actually being chased off their land and trying to find safety. That kind of shows the justice or the injustice of what happened to them. And then some of my Western romances, there's always a character or something in there that has been wronged, or something has happened that needs that they need justice, or to show how the injustices were dealt back then, I guess is how I want to say. So that's kind of how those all play in.
Right. And especially because a lot of not all of them, but a lot of your Western romances are more historical, right?
Yes, I have more historical ones than I do contemporary. Okay. And then the two contemporary, let's see, the two contemporary, they're actual novels and not novelettes. They have huge justice or injustice themes in them. So it's just how the characters were treated before they showed up in the books.
And being as you mentioned the Nez Perce, because I know that in a lot of the things that you write, they do feature prominently. And so I wonder what drew you to that specific tribe, and why you're so connected with them in your novels.
Because I grew up in the northeast corner of Oregon, which is where the Nez Perce wintered and summered. Well, the Chief Joseph band of the Nez Perce wintered and summered there. And so I've always found it interesting, and I didn't know why until after I started doing all my research, that we never saw any in the county except during Chief Joseph days, which is a big rodeo carnival weekend. And so I was fascinated by why they were here, but we don't see them. Why are they? And then as I did my research, I realized because they were banned from there because they were non-treaty Indians. So they were not allowed to go back to their homeland until, about the 1960s, 1970s. Then they started getting to come in a little more. And then I believe it's the 80s, they actually started having a powwow in the county now. They have a yearly powwow. So they're slowly, and they've started buying some land and stuff. So, wow. But yeah, that was my.
And I just think it's wonderful that you have featured them, having grown up in their native lands area. And it is so indicative of certainly what's happening with a lot of Native American tribes that were just not allowed or not recognized for a long period of time, and they're starting to come back slowly. So one of the things you mentioned in our previous little discussion was about having a sensitivity reader, and because you're not Native American yourself, is that the case?
Right, I have zero Native American in me. Yes.
So can you just kind of describe what a sensitivity reader does for you?
Okay. So like when I'm writing my stories that have the Native American characters, I like to have somebody Native American who reads them to make sure, like I do tons and tons of research. The Spirit trilogy that I have out, I had two Nez Perce, a woman and a man, who helped me when I would do my research and find out, oh, this is how they lived, this is what they did. And then I would write a scene, and then I would send them the scene and I say, okay, does this play all right? Am I not being stereotypical? Am I not, am I making it sound right? And they were, yes, that works. And, or they would, or I can't, like the one case I wanted to show a pregnancy or a birthing. And I asked the woman, I said, well, what was the birthing method? And she said, we really don't talk about that. So it was something that they didn't give up. So I had to just kind of make my own thing up. And then I sent that to her and I said, is this okay if I do it this way? I didn't, put too much into it, just kind of that it happened and all that. And she said, yes, that will work. You're not, I'm not giving anything away, and I wasn't doing anything that they would not like. And that's kind of what a sensitivity reader does. They just read the scenes or whatever that I write, and then lets me know, yes, it could happen that way, or did happen that way, or the way you word this doesn't sound right, or something like that. So that's why I have them for, not only I had them for the historicals, but I have them for my mysteries because I have Native American characters.
And I think that's so important. I've heard from other writers who have been really afraid to write a character that is not of their own race or culture or religion, depending upon the kind of stories that they're writing. And I've often heard that that's the best way to do it if you're truly interested, is to do a lot of research and then to involve people who are of that culture. So that's probably why you do so well, because I absolutely love all of your books. And I haven't read every single one, but I've read most of them and certainly some in every series. So, and I can really see that showing through. It makes really good sense to me. So we've talked a bit about the Spirit trilogy, which is, takes place a long time ago and revolves around some myths or beliefs of the Nez Perce. The other one of your series that I really loved, as you know, because I've raved about it so much, is the Isabella Mumphrey trilogy, which is really contemporary romantic suspense. And my favorite thing is that the protagonist is an anthropologist, but has kind of the instincts of a female MacGyver. And we now have 2 or 3 MacGyver shows in my lifetime, and they're all men. And it's so nice to see a woman in that role who's smart, who has a science background, and who can figure out things. So can you just talk about how that came about and how that perhaps, set some of the groundwork for you eventually moving into mysteries more than what you've done in the past?
Okay. Yeah, it was kind of, I kind of started that series on a dare as kind of sorts. Someone had written a book and they said it was a female Indiana Jones book. And I read it and I was like, this is not even, no, this doesn't seem like it. So somebody else said, well, if you don't think it is, then write one that you think is. So then I started brainstorming. Another author and I were writing to a conference, or not a conference, but we were having a retreat over at the coast. So we were riding together. So we had, 3 hours in the car, and I was telling her about it. And she goes, so if you were to do it, what would your main character be like? And I'm like, well, she would be kind of like my oldest niece, who's very smart. I said, and then, I just kind of kept going on with how this and that. And then I said, and I know what her name would be. I was just like that. The name just came to me and I told her the name and she goes, oh, I like that. She says, it's kind of funny and quirky, but at the same time, it sounds kind of scholarly.
Oh.
So anyway, we just kept talking about it. And by the time I came home from that retreat, I knew my character and I knew this story the first book I was going to write. So I just kind of, like I said, I just kind of wanted an Indiana Jones, MacGyver type of character and give her some flaws, which she's naive because she's a child prodigy. So she didn't get out in the world that much. And that kind of helps play into some of the scenes, which makes it fun to write.
Oh, I hadn't heard that Indiana Jones type from you before, or if I did, I'd forgotten, because it's so true, because she's an anthropologist. So, she understands these ancient artifacts. But the MacGyver part is more of how she gets out of situations very cleverly. So it's just
Right.
a
Yeah,
wonderful character. And
thank you. I really enjoyed writing.
I know that you haven't continued past the 3, but I'm going to, put a push out here during this, saying everyone needs to go buy them. And if it takes off, she'll write some more. So that, kind of that a bit of suspense, and as well as some mystery. And then the next things, then you started to write mysteries, kind of what I would call a cozy mystery with a Native American character, which you have how many books in that when you finally stopped?
Yeah, the Chandra Heigl mystery series has 16 books.
Wow.
So yeah, and that was this number 16 was the end. I was a little worried because I had so many people that really enjoy the series, but I was kind of because my daughters kept bugging me. They said, well, when are you going to end this? When are you going to end this? You don't want it to go too long. And I said, oh, I'll end it when I can't think of any more stories, that kind of thing. But then after I wrote the 15th, which added children to the story, it kind of felt like the 16th she needed to quit snooping around and getting herself in danger when she had children to take care of. So I just decided that was a nice way to end the series. And because it's kind of a paranormal where her grandmother came to her in dreams, I had that 16th one, the grandmother stops coming in her dreams too. So I just kind of wrapped it all up.
That's a great idea. And 16 is plenty, although I do know, some people like Sue Grafton did the whole alphabet, which was 26. So
yeah.
But it is a wonderful series. And again, I haven't read all 16, but they're all slightly different, and yet they have an overarching thing that happens because you're following the protagonist, through her life, really, and all the things that happen in her life, as well as her being a great detective. So I would tell people you could start anywhere in the series that you want, but certainly if you start at number 1, you're going to see that overall arc, and they're not that expensive. So you should, and if you want them to be even less, get her box sets, because then you can get a whole bunch of them at once for a good deal. After that mystery, or actually while you were still writing that mystery, I think is when you started the Gabriel Hawk series, which features a Native American Fish and Wildlife state trooper who has special skills in tracking. And this just seems to have really taken off, and you're doing quite well with it. So can you tell us a bit about how that concept came to you, and what you love about it, and kind of where you are and where you think you're going with that series?
Okay. Yes. Gabriel Hawk. I came up with the idea of having a state trooper in the county where I grew up. So Fish and Wildlife state trooper in Wallowa County, which is where I grew up. And I thought, wouldn't it be unique to have someone of Nez Perce heritage come there and work? So he's not only doing his job as a lawman, he's also protecting his ancestors' land. So it kind of gives him a dual purpose for being there. And so once I decided I wanted to do that, then I just asked my son-in-law, who's a state trooper, who he knew over there that was in Fish and Wildlife, and he set me up with a ride-along. So I got to do a day-long ride-along with the Fish and Wildlife state trooper in Wallowa County, which is what my character is. And so I was so excited because it just helped me see what they do all day long. He told me stories about things that he had to do or has done. And when I told him I was planning on writing murder mysteries, well, he go, well, then I'll tell you about this spot over here where we had such and such. And then we go to, oh, and by the way, we had such and such over here.
Wow.
And so it was really nice to get a firsthand look at it. And the reason some people go, well, you stereotyped the Native American as a tracker. That wasn't even in my thoughts. My thoughts were, I get so wound up when I go on my walks out here and I start following tracks of animals that I got really excited. I get excited about that. And so then I went and bought a book on tracking. And so I started reading this book on tracking. And it was just like, oh, they have this mindset, this focus. I don't have the focus, but they have this really deep focus when they're doing this tracking. And I thought, oh, that would be a really great, not only a good thing, but a flaw for my character to have that kind of one track mind when he's doing these things. And so that's why I made him a tracker. It wasn't because of his heritage. It was because I thought it fit well for how I wanted my character to be. And I'm having a blast writing those stories. The one I actually took a ride on the raft down the Snake River so I could see the area that I wanted him to be in where he's doing some tracking. And then I just got lucky to go take a trip to Iceland. And so I thought, and after I was there, discovered they have a huge search and rescue convention there every other year. And I thought, oh, that would be great to take Hawk there. So I did that in one book, but that one, it's kind of funny. Everybody loves the books that are set in Wallowa County, but the ones where I take him other places, they want him back in the county where all the people, you meet all the people residents of my area that I made. And that was another thing. I made up towns and gave them different names, but kind of put them in the same area as the real towns because I didn't want anybody I grew up with thinking I was writing about them. So I made sure that it all is different businesses, different names of towns, and I try really hard not to put any of the same last names of anybody I know that lives there. So, but I already got caught once. Somebody said, oh, that was such a nice tribute you did to my uncle in your book. And I'm like, I didn't. So I had to explain to them that I just picked that name out of the blue. It was not anybody in particular, but she said it sounded just like him. So that's what you run into.
Happy about.
Yes. At least he was a good guy.
Yeah, I think the problem is when you make a bad guy the name of someone who lives there, that can definitely get you into deep water. So, it's funny how I think particularly in series that readers like to get to know an area, both the settings as well as the town and the people. And so I can understand why they would prefer that. But as a writer, sometimes you just would like to take a little trip. So.
Yes, exactly.
So in terms of Gabriel Hawk, how many books are you in now? And is this going to be, you're just going to continue writing as long as they're still working for you? Or do you have a set number of books that you plan?
Okay, Gabriel Hawk number 7 will be my 50th book. That will be out here in May. At this time, I can see continuing with him for quite a while. There's so many scenarios I could come up with. And not only because the last book is actually set on the Umatilla Reservation, which is outside of Pendleton, where he grew up. So I can keep going back to there. And I mean, because people will still get sense of place because he's been there a couple of times, not for the whole book, but for, a couple of chapters. So they're starting to see that area as well as his home, as well as Wallowa County. So I'm thinking should be able to keep this up for a while yet. And I have collected a lot more readers with this series than I have any other series. Lots of men. They really like the male character.
Oh, that's great. It's always good to expand your readership for sure. And I can really see, to me, it's distinctive enough that I could really see perhaps a film or TV series being made from this. Just putting it out there in the universe in case anyone watches this, that they can check it out. Because it is unique in that it takes place in a part of Oregon that not a lot of people know about, which means that, you know, most people in the US don't know about. And I don't think I mean, the closest thing I can think of that's come to that is the things on Yellowstone, or you know, there are some kind of Western set series, but I just think that this is unique, being a wildlife state trooper and the tracking and all the different things that he gets into. So putting that out in the universe, all you film people who might be watching.
Thank you for that.
So I'd like to kind of close just by asking, you know, what is next in your career? I know that you never just write one series at a time. So, you know, what ones are you continuing, or are you starting new ones? You know, what's coming up next?
Okay, well, I have the last hawk book that was set on the Umatilla Reservation. I did bring in a new character that I'm starting her series next. And it will be set on the reservation at the casino, only I renamed the casino a different name, and I have it my own little world instead of trying to replicate theirs. It just was easier for finding information and getting it written. So that will be the Spotted Pony Casino Mysteries that will be coming out. I still have 3 books to write in my Silver Dollar Saloon series. I'm hoping to get one more of those out here after I finish the Spotted Pony book. And then I still actually have 3 more novellas I need to write in the Tumbling Creek Ranch series. But those have not been knocking at my head like the Silver Dollar Saloon ones have. So I just, this year I'm hoping to get the Spotted Pony one out, and then the Silver Dollar one, and then another Gabriel Hawk before the end of the year.
So can you just talk a little bit about, so the Spotted Pony Casinos it's definitely mystery. Now, are those cozy mysteries, or are those, you know, more along the Gabriel Hawk line?
I'm hoping to make them more along the Gabriel Hawk line. Even my Chandra Heigl mysteries weren't pure cozies. I tend to write with a little darker subjects than cozies do. So, and I tend to like the length of the Gabriel Hawk ones. So I'm hoping to make the Spotted Pony ones go about the same length. She's actually this head of security at the casino. So she's not really law enforcement, but she's not really an amateur sleuth either. So I never write in an exact genre. I always mishmash them, which makes it really hard.
Yeah, I hear you. I have the same problem. And then the Saloon series are historicals, correct?
Yes, they're historical romance. They're set in North Dakota.
Oh, okay. And how many books do you have there so far?
I have 3 so far. So it's going to end up being a 6-book series.
Yeah, I think I only read the first one. I'm not sure, but I do remember that you once again deal with some issues that people had during that time, you know, whether it was issues of racism, or certainly women in that period of time didn't have a lot of rights and so what
Right.
their lives were like. So that's one of the things I love about your writing is that you're not afraid to take on those issues, and yet you don't go so dark that you feel like you're going to be really depressed before the end of the book. It's like you do see things moving forward and people taking agency and making sure that not there's not someone coming in to save the poor little woman. The woman's taking agency for herself and moving forward. And so I really like that about your writing as a whole.
Oh, thanks. Yes, I like strong women.
As you are yourself, so that makes perfect sense. We have just a little bit of time left, so I'd like to ask you, is there anything that you've thought of as an author that you thought, boy, I'd love to write a book like this that I loved or like that, but you didn't pursue for some reason?
I have had a book in the back of my head knocking around for probably 10 years that would be probably middle school, maybe high school. But it deals, and again, it's kind of the injustices. It deals with how the world all goes one way and it ruins things. And there's a small group over here that's trying to bring it back the way it was. And it's kind of, it would be where they have to learn to work together and figure out how to get back to the normal, or the I don't want to say the right way. It's not the right way. It's the way that everybody will survive. They have to get back to how everybody can survive, where they think that it's this way and that's not working, and they need to go back to this way. Kind of like farmers versus city people. That's kind of the, you need to grow your food. You need to do this. You need to do that. And these people say, oh, no, we don't. We've got this in the store. We can just go buy it. No, it comes from here. Right. That type of thing. And so that's kind of, I had this idea, like I said, floating around in there for quite a while, but I keep remembering, years ago, it would have been in the early 80s. I went to a Highlights for Children conference for authors, or I'm not sure what it was called, but anyway, I was just a brand newbie and I thought I was going to write children's books. And I went back there and I kept getting told over and over again, you write adult. So that stuck in my head that maybe I can't write this for the younger people. Maybe I need to write it as an adult type book, but yet, I don't know. It's just one of those things that, you get something stuck in your head, or somebody tells you something and you just kind of let it keep, eating at you.
Yes. Well, that's really interesting. I think a lot of authors, particularly anyone who's had children or grandchildren, at some point think I really should write books for them. At least that's, I've been thinking that lately myself. I did write one children's reader way back in the late 70s that was published by University Press, and that was the last one. And but I know what you mean, and you write adults so well, and it's hard to get that voice. And so, well, never know. Knowing you, Paty, if you really want to do it, you'll find a way to do it somehow. Well, I really appreciate you for taking the time to do this interview. And for my listeners out there, you can learn more about Paty at her website, which is patyjager.net. That's PatyJager.net. But I'll put all the links in the show notes, her website, links to her books, and any social media contacts I can find for her. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time with another episode of Dust Jackets, Conversations for Authors.